Hey, you're on ThursdAI. I'm Alex Volkov. Today was an incredible show, and I wanted to come in and record this housekeeping before you listen to this, because there's quite a lot of things happening at once, and I'm very happy to be able to bring this episode to you. I was very excited to chat with Roy Cohen and Maxime Lebon. Roy is the PM for AI21 and the recently released JAMBA, which, if you follow the pod, is a new hybrid architecture between transformers and Mamba. And Roy is the PM from the company, and he talked to us about how JAMBA came about. And Maxime was one of the first folks in the world to actually take this model and fine-tune it. And so we combined two conversations into one. It was very, very interesting. We were nearing the end of the show. The embargo on the news from Weights and Biases lifted, and we actually had breaking news of our own. And I would bring you this conversation first. So what you'll hear is our intro to the show, and then you'll hear a segment of me talking with Tim Sweeney and Scott Cordon about something that we've released, which to the folks who are listening live was a breaking news, but you're going to get to hear it first. And then you'll hear the TLDR for the rest of the show. As a reminder, Weights and Biases annual conference is happening in April 18th. And the workshop that I'm running together with my team is happening April 17th. So if you're looking for an excuse to go to San Francisco, or if you're already in San Francisco, feel free to use the code ThursdAI on fullyconnected.com and register and come meet us, meet the team, meet some very incredible folks from foundational model creators, and I hope to see you there. With that, I won't delay further. Please enjoy the show and share it with your friends if you liked it. Hello everyone, welcome to yet another Thursday, the first of Q2 2024, April 4th, not April 1st, by the way. So those of you who are here expecting Andrej Karpathy from OpenAI whistleblowing, that was a ruse, folks. That actually worked. That was a ruse. Andrej Karpathy will not be joining us for this one. I mean, he may. He didn't say he will. And I don't know, Nistan, if this is if you're expecting Andrej. But welcome to this week. This week started really fun with April 1st. According to my, I don't know, Nistan, if you participated in my poll, but according to my poll that I did on Twitter, like 70% of folks who voted on this, like I don't know, like hundreds of people voted on this, 70% didn't do anything for April 1st. Didn't try to participate, didn't do any gags. What happened to April 1st? I liked it. I did a lot of stuff. Nistan, did you fool anyone?
No, but it was so annoying that the jokes were all becoming believable. People put a lot of thoughts in them, and it just everyone fell for something.
That's true. That's true. I did get a few folks. One of my, I don't know if it worked or not. I don't know if you guys saw this, but I definitely tried to use AI for as much of those as possible. And like we're living now in a world where you can generate a video, an image, an audio, etc. I just said that I'm switching careers into a DJ, solely speaking in Russian and solely playing AI music from Suno. And when I sent it to folks, they didn't raise an eye. They're like, yeah, that tracks. I was like, I'm not becoming a Russian DJ. That makes no sense. But people are like, yeah, that tracks. So I definitely agree with you. The jokes are becoming believable. However, I had a lot of fun on April 1st. There was a bunch of AI stuff, very interesting. So I don't know, folks, we need to have more fun, not less fun. That's what I'm all about. With that, I will just say that we have a ton of stuff to talk through this week, including a bunch of breaking news. And we also have a special interview today. If you guys remember JAMBA from AI21, we talked about it last week. AI21 are customers of Weights and Biases, and I get to work at this amazing place where like pretty much everybody's a customer. And so we reached out and we told them like, hey, congrats on the release. Do you guys want to come? And they're like, yes. So today, a little bit later in the second hour, we're going to have a chat with Roy Cohen. And we also are going to, I see Roy already in the audience, so Roy, feel free to come up and comment on events if you want to. But our conversation is going to be in the second hour. But also today, We're going to talk about fine tunes, because when somebody releases a new model, the benefit of this is the fine-tuning community, which we know and love, is jumping on this. If you guys remember our chat with Maxime Lebon, the guy behind the awesome lazy merge kit and a bunch of merges, Maxime actually took Jamba and fine-tuned it on the Platypus dataset. Authors of which we're also friends of the pod. So you see how all this works? And so Maxime is going to join us, and we're going to talk with Roy. Roy, I just want to acknowledge you on the stage. Welcome. Feel free to unmute and say hi to folks, and we're going to do a deeper dive later.
Thank you for having me, Alex. Great to be here. Happy to talk about Jamba and AI21.
Awesome. Thanks. Feel free to stick around with us until the interview in the next hour or so. And for now, I think that we'll go into the section that's called TLDR, that you guys know and love, where basically I will tell you everything we're going to talk about. So if you don't have time, just stick for this section. But not this week. This week, I really implore you to stay throughout the whole show, because we have some breaking news on breaking news. Folks, we're about to release some breaking news in just a few minutes. I want to ask Tim and Scott, do you guys think we're ready, or should we talk about something else for 7 minutes?
We can fire away.
I think we're ready.
Okay.
Hopefully it's working. This is my first time using Spaces.
Thanks for having Tim, you're coming through loud and clear. Scott, you're coming through loud and clear. Thank you, folks, for joining. And I will just give maybe this preface to folks before I kind of switch to the breaking news. Everybody who joins ThursdAI team, I think this is your first time. Scott, I've seen you around, at least in the audience. I don't remember you joining on stage. You guys know how much we love breaking news, and how much specifically we love bringing the folks who kind of breaking the news to the stage. So now I'm giving you breaking news before they actually announce. So we're going to announce in 6 minutes, I think it's scheduled. But since I joined Weights and Biases, we've been working on something incredible. And one of the reasons why I joined was this kind of move. And so I'm very happy to be participant in the news that we cover here on ThursdAI as well. So let's start with the breaking news button, and then the stage will go to Tim to do the announcement. AI breaking news from Weights and Biases, coming at you only on ThursdAI. Let's go. I'll also add this. All right, I want to say hi to Tim Sweeney and Scott Condron from the team of Weights and Biases. Please, Tim, please unmute and introduce yourself briefly and what you do for the company, and then we'll get Scott, and then we'll talk about what we actually have to announce.
Great. Thank you, Alex, and love the sound effects. Hey, folks, my name is Tim Sweeney. I'm a principal engineer here at Weights and Biases, and have spent the last year or so focused on building new tools for Gen AI builders, and really excited to announce some new software today and share that with you folks. Excited to be on this call and move forward in the industry building great things. I'm joined here by Scott, our lead product manager. Over to you, Scott.
Hey, folks. Yeah, excited to talk about what we're launching today. Nice to meet y'all.
Awesome. So when I joined, I definitely Scott, and I connected super quick, and Scott's you're the target persona audience of the stuff that we're working on. All right, let's get to the announcements. Let's not beat around the bush. We have some incredible stuff to announce today. Tim, over to you.
Yeah, awesome. So as you alluded to, Alex, I think in a couple of minutes here, 5 minutes, we'll be sharing a blog post more broadly, but you heard it here first. We are announcing a new toolkit called Weave from Weights and Biases, which is a suite of tools for developing and productionizing generative AI applications. Just like the core Weights and Biases product, if y'all have used it, we really focus on lightweight integrations to give you value immediately, and then ramp up to support more complex and robust workflows. So with just a few lines of code, you'll be able to instrument your Gen AI applications, whether those are LLMs or otherwise, log, version, and track all of the data that's passing through your system, track code and objects, data sets, and models, and then ramp up to experimenting with different prompt techniques, model changes, parameters, and all the way to evaluation, deployment, and serving. So we're really excited to share this with you. More details in written form are probably nice, but that's what we're coming out with. We're really excited to share it.
So we're announcing Weave. And as you folks know, and we just talked with folks from AI21, machine learning folks, Weights and Biases, the models product that we have is ubiquitous. Pretty much when we went to NeurIPS, everybody, and Tim, I think we were there as well, and everybody came up to us and just, hey, we use Weights and Biases, we love you guys. And the only thing I could ask back was okay, give us feedback. What else? It's pretty much ubiquitous everywhere. And we saw this from the papers and the folks participating in NeurIPS. And then people kept asking us what about, okay, so the model is ready. Can you guys support prompting the model? And so now we're releasing some stuff that can actually support this type of folks, prompting and everything. Scott, you want to maybe talk about some of the pain points that we saw that Weave solves for folks?
Yeah, cool. So I guess the origin of Weights and Biases has always been building tools for experimentation and building tools for building machine learning models. So you have access to a GPU, you're training models for like a lot of time, you're spending a lot of money on those GPUs. So you want to like get like really make sure you're getting bang for your buck of the compute you're using, and you want to stop using spreadsheets to track your machine learning runs. So like that's been weights and biases bread and butter. And as you said, like all of the sort of best models that are all being used today are a lot of them are trained on weights and biases, or the teams that are training them are using weights and biases to track their training runs. But with the release of sort of some of these more like powerful LLM APIs and like LLMs in general, people are able to spend more time at that application layer and really like leverage LLMs to build apps. And it's a type of application building that we think is new, and we're excited to build new tools to help with that work, like these workflows. For example, you can just add the OpenAI API to, or whatever LLM of choice, to your application, and all of a sudden now it's like an AI powered application. And we're seeing teams like be able to build like pretty decent proof of concepts, but then like when it comes to applying them, and it's like coming to applying them in production or across like a wide array of use cases, it's really tough to develop with these things. Yeah, this new toolkit is what is built around that application of trying to apply AI or generative AI to applications and really build around them. And it's built in the same mindset as Tim said. It's like we really want it to be lightweight. We really want it to be easy to get started. And we want people to, in future conferences, maybe software developers who are building with Gen AI, I want to be at those conferences and people are coming up and saying, well, I love how easy it is to use and how composable it is, or whatever, like we see from model trainers today with weights and biases.
So I just, thank you, Scott and Tim. I just added a tweet from Sean, our co-founder, about Weave. And I'm very excited about Weave, specifically because it's really clear now how difficult it is to productize, Scott, like you said, to productize these products based on generative AI and especially LLMs. And then also the big thing that we keep talking about this here is that evaluation is really hard as well. It's really hard to know on production whether or not your APIs are working. If you're switching from like GPT-4, for example, for Claude, suddenly you have to have new intuition about prompting. And then how do you know if it ends up on production and ends up working for your users as well? And all of these problems, like many folks who are building cool MVPs and cool like demos, then the folks who are like in charge of putting those products in production based on those models, they struggle with that feedback. They struggle with understanding. They struggle with evaluations. And we've seen definitely multiple evaluation techniques now pop up, stuff like just a programmatic evaluation, whether or not the model even returned JSON to you or not. That's a big one. And these models are better at tool use, etc. But then we also see like human evaluations where like your customers will thumbs up or down on responses, and everybody's like building data sets. But then also like we talked often about fine-tuning, whether or not fine-tuning actually works. And we just talked about today, the OpenAI released their fine-tuning service, again with integration with weights and biases, but then how do you actually know when you deploy a fine-tuned model in your application, in your chatbot, in your rack system? How do you actually know that it works? And this is, to me, the exciting part of the type of stuff that we're trying to solve for. I want to highlight maybe one specific technical feature before we drop, because we're like at time. I just really wanted to highlight this. I wanted to talk about the versioning part of this. Maybe, Tim, if you want to chat about this, and then maybe Scott. I really enjoyed, I got an early access to Weave, and I've been using this for a while, and I'll be talking more about Weave in the coming months. But I want to talk about the versioning, because to me, the versioning was a very big piece of this. I wrap my code, and then sometimes some smart things are happening behind the scenes. Tim, can you talk about this?
Yeah, definitely. Thanks, Alex. Most people are familiar with version control from a source perspective, using Git or otherwise to version your code. But what we notice is with these workflows, you're often changing implementations of functions in a very iterative and ad hoc way, where version control doesn't really fit that need all the time. And so with Weave, what you do is the basic getting started, the hello world of Weave, is to take any function that you have. Maybe it's a function that calls out to OpenAI or a function that does something interesting, and you decorate it with @weave.op. And what that does is it allows you to track all the inputs and outputs forever using weights and biases Weave, the UI application. But underneath the hood, what's happening is the actual source of the function is being tracked and versioned over time. And the inputs and outputs, when applicable, are also versioned. So if you have models that are coming in, or pydantic objects or data classes that are coming in, similar on the way out, all of those objects are versioned and tracked over time with appropriate names, etc. So in the UI, you can go back and see what was the exact state of my code or my functions or my pipeline when it got this particular answer, what was the exact state of the model, what was the prompt that I used, etc. All kind of happens behind the scenes and automatically for you, so that you don't need to think about versioning or think about tracking these things. But when you need to review and need to reflect or reproduce, they're available right there for you in the application. So we're really proud of that work, and thank you for letting us highlight it, Alex. I'm excited to have people on this call give it a shot. It literally just announced. Our folks just pressed go on the PyPy package, so it's live. Yeah, really excited.
Yeah, folks, pip install Weave, and definitely we're looking for feedback, because the amount of use cases for LLM kind of and generative AI applications is vast. The amount of the ways in which the users use them, which is what makes it hard to evaluate them, the way in which users use them, we've all seen from different applications in the wild where folks are like using chatbots to get a free airline tickets. We've all seen like these examples, and these tools are currently lacking. We in Weights and Biases are, as I said, ubiquitous in the ML ops and experiment tracking, and we are now stepping very strongly into the LLM. However, we want to know the use cases, we want to know the failure cases, we want to know what is the community is focused on as well. And so obviously feel free to reach out to me, to Tim, to Scott, to the rest of the folks here as you try this out. We're very excited to hear from you as well. We're going to do a bunch of events next quarter. I'm going to appear on a bunch of events, Scott and Tim probably as well, to do hackathons and try to instrument as many models with this and see what is the best tool that we can build for you, basically. With that, folks, Tim and Scott, I just want to appreciate for a brief second how much I saw you guys work on this, you and the rest of the team. So really a shout out from everybody here on ThursdAI. I've been waiting for this. I'm very happy that we finally are able to talk about this in the open and step into the LLM tracking and evaluation game and basically kill it as much as we killed the other game with machine learning. So this is to you. Thank you, folks. Thank you. I'm very happy that we did the announcement here on ThursdAI. I'm very, this wasn't like super planned. Yeah, folks, like yesterday or like a couple of days ago, we said, okay, 11 a.m. Pacific on Thursday, which I'm very happy. As always, breaking news on ThursdAI is always awesome.
So you can actually check out our docs if you are one of these people that are like trying to apply AI to build applications, like maybe a RAG app or whatever. You can go to wandb.me/weave and you can check out our docs. It should be pretty easy to get started. Yeah, this is just a start, so we're excited to hear feedback and iterate, but it's something that we're really excited about, and we're really excited to be able to talk publicly about it now.
So with that, I think we'll conclude here. We'll definitely talk more about Weave. If you give this a shot, give us a shout out, and we'll talk to you and we'll listen to your feedback as well. Right. Let's do the TLDR. What's going on, everyone? This is ThursdAI from April 4th. I'm Alex Volkov, AI evangelist with Weights and Biases, and oh boy, we have some exciting stuff that we've talked today, and here's everything that we've covered on ThursdAI, April 4th. I'm gonna start actually with the last thing that we just covered, but if you're tuning in right now to the podcast, for example, you will hear a conversation of us announcing a new tool for generative AI and LLM application called Weave from Weights and Biases, and we're really excited to announce this on ThursdAI, but also broadly, and we're really excited to be able to offer a toolkit for tracking and evaluation. The software engineers, the AI engineers, the folks who build with LLMs of those applications, a conversation with Tim and Scott from the team you can hear at the end of this podcast, and it's I'm super excited. Additionally, from Weights and Biases, we're coming to San Francisco in 2 weeks where we're going to actually talk about Weave as well. And so we have a workshop on the April 17th, and we have our annual conference called Fully Connected on April 18th. And actually, I got a promo code for you guys. So if you are in San Francisco during those times, or you're looking for an excuse to your boss to go to San Francisco, there's not a better conference that week in San Francisco than Fully Connected. And if you sign up right now with the promo code ThursdAI, not only will you get 50% off of your ticket, I will also know that you signed up because you're a ThursdAI fan, and come and give me a high five and meet the rest of the team and hear us announce We've on the broad stage. We're going to have folks like folks from NVIDIA. We're going to have folks from Meta. The chief Llama, I think, from Meta is coming. There's going to be a lot of like foundational models folks in the audience as well, because again, like I said, everybody works with weighted biases. So this is from us, but also we covered so much on ThursdAI besides this that I really am excited to just run through everything. So I'm going to try to do this like super quick. We started with talking in the open source that Princeton released something called Agent, SWE-Agent. If you guys remember, we talked about Devin before. So this is the open source version of something like a Devin agent. They get an incredible 12.3 score on SVE bench, the benchmark that's like really hard to do. And Devin was very famous for getting 13% there. Just for comparison, regular GPT-4 plus RAG gets 1.4% on that score, right? So just so you understand how difficult this is. And Claude 3 Opus with RAG gets 3%. This new agent from Princeton, Ophir Press, and some other very incredible folks gets very close to Devin, like almost 13%, 12.2%. They do this by giving their agent their own like Docker container and something called agent computer interface, which allows it to browse and search and edit and run code. Very interesting. Then we talked about the fact that JAMBA from AI21, the paper was released with a bunch of very interesting ablation studies and a bunch of interesting architectural choices, let's say, that they did. And we also had Roy Cohen from AI21. He was here talking about the paper as well, which was super cool. We then covered that Justine Tooney, backed up by Mozilla, released a new update for Llama file. We also had breaking news today from Cohere. Cohere came up with an upgraded model. Cohere called it Command R Plus. It's a significantly bigger RAG optimized 104 billion parameter model that specifically is fine-tuned for RAG purposes. It has also extended context. It has 128,000 tokens of context in it, and it's multilingual. It supports 10 languages fairly quick. It looks like an incredible model. We had a chat with Nistan and Yam about this, so very excited to see how much this bigger model will perform as well. We had a very interesting discussion about the new paper from DeepMind called Mixture of Depth paper. And I want to thank LDJ and Justin for the deep dive into this paper. We actually mentioned two other open source stuff from our friends, John Durbin. He re-released the Bagel series and I think Ouroboros as well on top of Yi34B with 200,000 context window. So shout out to John Durbin. And then also Eric Hartford released a new Dolphin as well on top of the new Mistral that we've mentioned before, the 0.2 base Mistral. And these are like the top of the folks that we know in the open source community. The datasets are great. So shout out to John Durbin and Eric Hartford. And also, we should definitely mention that Maxime Lebon, also a friend of the pod who's here with us and had a deep dive conversation, also released a fine tune of JAMBA on top of the Platypus dataset as well. So this is it in the open source. Then we talked about big companies, LLMs and their APIs. And I think the highlight there was Cloudflare. Cloudflare, me and Nistan talked about how they're slept on by many people. They still are thought of as like DNS, but in fact, they have this vast workers platform where you can build and deploy applications. And they recently stepped into the AI game with workers.ai. And so now they announced the workers.ai is like in general availability now. They announced pricing. They also announced the workers now run Python, and they have integrated with LangChain and Llama Index. And hopefully now that we've announced Weave, they're going to have Weave there as well. I'm going to talk to some folks in Cloudflare about this. But I just want to highlight that they've added a bunch of models in the Cloudflare AI offering. So Cloudflare will run those GPUs for you, and you will not have to have like a Linux machine. It will all be serverless. And they now have models like Mistral 7B Instruct and DeepSeek and Llama and Qwen 1.5B. Like they have a bunch of models there in Cloudflare, which is incredible. Now you can run them in this worker AI platform. They also announced an integration with Hugging Face. So for these models, you can one-click Hugging Face and install these like models on your Cloudflare account. And they also, very interesting thing they announced is a fine-tune support via bring your own LoRa's. So you can fine-tune models and train them with LoRa and then take the artifact of that and put it in your Cloudflare account. So you basically are able to productize fine-tuned models on top of Cloudflare. Super cool announcement from Cloudflare. As I mentioned before, we ship Cloudflare, but we don't get paid for them. But they're a super cool company. Don't sleep on Cloudflare and give them a try. We then talked about OpenAI's a few announcements. OpenAI opened up GPT 3.5 to everybody who visits the website without login requirements, without having to provide the phone number. Very interesting move from OpenAI there. Also, we mentioned briefly that OpenAI released a voice engine blog. So they released a new blog that said, hey, we actually built something called Voice Engine, but we're not going to give it to you. We'll only give it to a few select partners because it's really election season around the world for this year. And so we don't want to overcomplicate how natural a deepfaked voice can sound. So OpenAI has announced voice engine but did not release this. And the last thing that OpenAI actually in the breaking news matter announced is an improvement on their fine-tuning service, including some examples from companies like Harvey that significantly improved their models. So not only improvement in fine-tuning service, they now integrate well with weights and biases. We're actually the only platform to get integrated with OpenAI when you fine-tune something. So you can now fine-tune with OpenAI and get a nice weights and biases dashboard. It's super cool. And they announced a bunch of new tooling for fine-tune, so you can actually compare the outputs of two models. So if you are fine-tuning, but you don't want to do this alone on your GPUs, you're now able to do it for 3.5. Very cool blog post from OpenAI, and shout out to them for integrating with us as well. We then covered that Replit had their dev day yesterday, and Replit has big moves on AI, definitely, because more than 10 million, I actually don't know the number, but like Nist, I think, said 100 million or something folks use Replit. They had their dev day yesterday, and they announced a new model called Replit Code Repair. We then covered a little bit news of Google. Logan Kilpatrick, the dev rel for OpenAI that recently left, announced he joins Google's AI from Gemini, which is great, and good luck, Logan. And also Google announced Gemini prices, finally. And one last thing in the big companies and LLMs and APIs that we covered, Grok with the Q, the company with the LPUs, the super fast inference chips, lends function calling. As I just talked about, Cohere's Command R function calling is a big thing that many people are looking for. Developers building RAG applications top, they actually need function calling for a bunch of this. So if you are using Grok for that fast inference, they now support function calling / tool use as well. I think we're moving forward and to voice and audio category. We've covered in OpenAI's voice engine. Will not be released to developers, but we definitely talked at least a little bit that you and your loved ones have to have the conversation that your voice can be cloned. Don't trust anything that people say that sounds weird, and teach your mom and grandma that they shouldn't trust them either. Also in the audio category, we talked about Stable Audio version 2, which you can actually check out for free on stableaudio.com. It's not open source, so the era of Stability releasing open source stuff is potentially over, but it's still super, super cool. We actually played a little sample. You can use audio to audio, so you can like record yourself hum or beat on your table, do beatbox, and ask for drums or bass or bass line or whatever. And also we covered that you can now run Whisper on MLX, and it's 10 times as fast as Whisper.cpp. So for those of you who are building like voice application, and if you use Lightning Whisper MLX, you'll get like super fast automatic speech recognition with Whisper. I think that's pretty much it of what we covered in voice and audio. The last thing that we've barely mentioned, OpenAI also released DALL-E in painting. So right now, if you go to ChatGPT, if you pay for it, you can generate an image. You can click on this image. You can paint out some areas of this image and ask DALL-E to repaint them, which is super cool because you can iterate on an output, continue, and then get the results that you want. We also had a deep dive conversation with AI21. So if you guys remember last week, AI21 released something called JAMBA, which is a hybrid architecture that uses Mamba, the state space model, and then also joint attention, and they're basically getting the benefit of both worlds, both from transformers and the state space models for larger context and higher throughput. So I was very lucky to have Roy from AI21 join us and talk to us about Jamba and kind of the decisions behind this architecture in the paper. And also one of the reasons why they open sourced Jamba was to support the community fine-tune as well. So I was very happy to also join this conversation with Maxime Lebon, who we've talked previously about merging, but he's also very interested in SSMs. So he actually released a new fine-tune of Jamba on the Platypus dataset today. So Maxime also joined this conversation. It was a great conversation. If you want to understand more what state space models is, what are the benefits of a Mamba architecture on top of a regular transformer, or what are the potential future applications, definitely check this out. And we ended the conversation with something that I started with Weights and Biases releasing Weave, and I will end on this as well. All right, let's start with open source. Open source AI, let's get it started. All right, folks. I think the first thing that I want to talk about, and thank you, Nistan, for all the links up there on top. As always, we'll have the links in the show notes. And if you're subscribed to ThursdAI.news, you'll get a list of all these things. Princeton folks released SWE-Agent, basically an open source Devin. If you guys don't remember, Devin is this very well-funded, very stacked team of folks who built this agent that can do 13% on something called SWE Bench, a hard-to-do software engineer evaluation. And if you just use RAG with GPT-4, it gets 1%, 1.4. If you use RAG with Opus, it gets like 4%. Devin came out and said, hey, we're doing like 13% or something. It's a very complex task that involves GitHub comments, whatever. And everybody was like raving about, oh, Devin, this and that. And we've talked about Devin, and it looks definitely pretty cool. Kind of the hype a little bit lowered since then, but it's still pretty cool. And now here's an open source agent, which again, I will remind you folks, we've been tracking these open source agents for a while, like from AutoGPT and Baby AGIs of the world to Open Interpreter and to Crew AI, like all of these, there's a bunch of frameworks. This one comes from folks at Princeton, and specifically like very serious folks like Ophir Press, for example, the guy behind like Longer Attention. And I think they also came up with SWE Bench, I'm not sure, but they released SWE-Agent. It's an open source, and it comes very close to Devin. So Devin has all these super stoked folks and a bunch of VC money, and they released an open source that comes very close to Devin, 12.3% on SWE-Agent, and it's able to do quite incredible things. And the way it's able to do this is they let learning LLMs like GPT-4 interact with their own Docker container. And if you guys remember Devin, the cool thing about Devin was also the UI. They had a browser, they had a console, they had a IDE, they had all these things that the agent is able to use. And it's very important to be able to use like a browser to be able to go browse some code, etc. So they implemented some of these stuff into the open source one. So they have a Docker container, and they have something called ACI, Agent Computer Interface, which I found very interesting, allowing it to browse and search and edit and run code. So they have like specific things about running code. And it has a dedicated terminal as well. So like tools and different things it can use. And an agent with access to all these tools can actually perform tasks significantly better than just GPT-4 with RAG. I think that's all I have about this. Nista, I saw you post about this as well. What's your take on SWE-Agent?
It's pretty good, but it wasn't doing much for my C++ issues. So still 9 out of 10 issues you, the human, have to boil your brains out and solve. I would say, remember how when Code Interpreter came out and we were talking about how the model itself knows the environment that it's in and the file system that it's in. And I remember you saying that it acts more like an agent. And this was before they nerfed it and integrated it into the other one. They're partly doing that. And I think the next step would be to train an actual model to do it. But at the end of the day, to use OpenDevin, Princeton NLP, you still need like a GPT-4 or Opus API key. The other models, maybe DeepSeek 67 might be able to do it, but I haven't tested that. So while it is open, it's still dependent on closed source API. So I think that the next step would be to train a model on that operating system interface that they built. That would be the next big thing, I think.
Ophir just posted this SWE-Agent walkthrough video that he posted, and where he actually saw the real bug for him in the training code in scikit-learn or sklearn, which is a library that all these machine learning folks use, and it looks pretty cool. SWE-Agent, unless folks have comments, let's move on because we have tons of other stuff to cover. But you guys are welcome to use it. It's open source. You can go to SWE-Agent.sh. He said it's definitely in the thread, and we're going to add this in the show notes. No, SWE-agent.com. It's not perfect, like any of these agent tools are not perfect. It's very interesting to see how long context, for example, will help these agents to work out. Let's talk about the JAMBA paper. So we've talked about JAMBA the model, and we're going to have a deep discussion about JAMBA the model. But we have Roy here in the open source area. We would have covered the JAMBA paper anyway. Roy, you guys released the paper on April 1st, and there's a bunch of folks from AI21 on the paper. What are some of the interesting things that you can talk to us through that?
Yeah. Sure. Yeah. So we released the paper on April 1st. The paper talks about all the experiments that we did, like to get to JAMBA. We saw the Mamba paper back in December. We're really excited. We were starting working on a new model. We did a lot of experiments with a lot of SSM models, with transformers, with MOE. And we got to the JAMBA architecture. After a lot of experiments, we kind of realized that Mamba has its flaws, specifically with in-context learning. We saw a lot of issues. So we decided to try to combine Mamba and transformers. We also talk in the paper about kind of the experiments of the ratio of including how many Mamba layers, how many transformer layers, and what we see working. We also show that you don't need positional encoding. We talk about some issues of scaling the Mamba to that level and kind of like optimizations that we did to make it work. All the results, like the throughput, we talk a lot about the throughput analysis and the effectiveness and efficiency of running Jamba. And it's a very exciting new architecture that we're really excited to see what the open source community do with. And of course,
congrats on the paper. I think it was very well received. The amount of like details there is not shying, like it's very impressive. I will be amiss if I don't mention, I haven't seen many papers with as much weights and biases traces there and logs, and it's super cool to see, especially because you guys compare different things. You compare attention Mamba ratio to only Mamba or only attention. There's a bunch of comparisons, and it's just gorgeous to see. So folks definitely should check out. There's a bunch of information there, and I'm sure that this paper will be cited in a bunch of other continued trainings of joint attention and Mamba together in the hybrid architectures. As we just said this, we will talk about all of this deeper with Roy in the next hour of the show. So this was just like our coverage of the news about the paper, but we'll definitely dive into the paper and Jamba itself and the architecture in the second part. So folks, please stay with us. Let's move on to Llama file. So I mentioned Llama file just briefly, but let me see if I can find the Llama file from Justine. Llama file is this way of, maybe, let me just like, Justine, if you don't mind putting this in the, I'll send it in our green room. If you don't mind putting this up. Llama file is this way of running whatever LLMs you want with just one executable file. Package it and just send it to users, and it's really performant. It comes from Justine Tooney, and Mozilla is backing this up. And it's been incredible. We mentioned this before, but what's incredible is the level of detail that Justine went into to create and to optimize this. And just the fact that we're in 2024. There's llama.cpp has been around for a long time. People like squeeze the optimization of this to impossible extent, and then still somebody can come up with 5x improvement on CPUs, which I find like just ridiculous. I don't know, Nissen, have you ever used Llama file? I remember you, like, at least we talked about this.
I've used it for a couple of months. So what it lets you do is you make one universal executable and you include the model in it, and it's pretty easy to build. The one thing that's kind of funny about it is that you have to do chmod plus x, so you have to make it an executable, and that exposes your system to a lot of things. Now, it's fine if you download directly from Justine and from people, so there's a risk in there. But what she did that was crucial in this case was improve the CPU eval time, and she doubled it with, there are a whole stack of tricks which should probably have a whole space devoted. But yeah, the issue that I'll quickly go, the problem she's trying to solve is that if you run CPU inference, it can run okay. You can get like 10 tokens per second, but the prompt eval time, if you dump in 1,000 tokens, that's still only like 10 tokens per second. So that's going to take 100 seconds. And you dump in 4,000 tokens, which a lot of people do these days and more, that's going to take 400 seconds. So now you have a couple of minutes before the model starts even responding. And this is a big problem with CPU-based inference. So she did a whole stack of tricks and got them working to improve that. And there's more to do in that regard as well. But I recommend it for people that are making like small Dockers and stuff, if you're going to run it in a containerized environment, or you just have like your own little bot file that you can just run on any Linux. I do quite recommend using it. I use it. So it's pretty good.
Thanks, Nissen. The blog post, the tricks that you said, the blog post opens up with these words. I just wrote 84 new matrix multiplication kernels for Llama file. Which enable it to read and write prompts faster. Like 84 new matrix multiplication kernels. And specifically, Justine talks about performance gains on home-based hardware like Raspberry Pi. Like Llama file is able to get 62 tokens per second on tiny Llama 1.1b, on a Raspberry Pi device, which is like $40, like a tiny computer, which is quite incredible because the amount of stuff the hobbies can now do locally on their devices. This is the kind of the stuff that we've talked about here in the open source. Once these models get here, that's the stuff that we're going to be able to do. Super cool. Definitely give this a try, especially if you want to run stuff locally on your machines and completely offline as well. It's time to talk about Cohere, and this is breaking news. AI breaking news coming at you only on ThursdAI. All right, folks. I just want to acknowledge that another co-host of the space, LDJ, showed up, and we didn't even say hi. Hey, LDJ, what's up, man?
Hey, thanks for having me up. You could hear me, right?
Yes, we can hear you fine. Perfect. Have you seen the Cohere announcement?
Command R plus, right?
Yes. Yeah. Let's talk about
Command
R
looks
plus.
Cool. So I think it's not MOE, right? It's just a dense model.
It's a dense model, yeah.
It's not. It's 64-layer, 108B model.
Yeah, I haven't looked into it too deeply, but it looks like it's, from what I saw, the benchmarks are competing with Mr. Large.
Yep. So we've talked about Command R before, if you guys remember, and LDJ, you remember, like the purpose of Command R and the benchmarks and evals, they weren't trying to compete with the Llama or something. Command R was specifically trained on, hey, if you're in an enterprise setting and you want RAG specifically, Command R would be for you in terms of like price, performance, and speed. We'll significantly improve speed and tool use and price performance. And so Command R comes out after this, and Command R is showing incredible. First of all, it's a 104 billion parameter model, so significantly bigger. I think Command R is like 34. I don't remember off the top of my head. They added context, which is like 128K context on this model. So now you can use this model with significantly larger context for your RAG stuff. And I think the highlights is it's multilingual with 10 languages that are native. And multilinguality helps because there are companies outside of the US with customers outside of the US with German and Italic, etc. And the highlight of this model specifically is tool use. So everything that Command R does specifically, they're not focusing on general knowledge abilities like to be GPT-4, etc. They're focusing on, hey, we know what our niche is. Our niche is like to be able to train these models to do function calling or what we now call tool use. And they've implemented incredible like evaluations on tool use specific evals like tool talk and Berkeley function calling. If you guys remember, Berkeley released something called Gorilla, and they also have a function calling leaderboard. So they also have evaluations for this. And Command R Plus is getting to GPT-4 level, at least on those specific benchmarks, or even beating GPT-4 level. Now, obviously, when somebody like Cohere releases something, they want to show the evals in which they beat GPT-4. They don't show us the evals in which they don't. I don't know. The regular stuff that we talk about, the MMLU score, the human eval score, we don't yet know. I don't think they've mentioned this. But yeah, this model is open weights. You can use it. You cannot use it. So you cannot use this in production. You would have to go to Cohere and pay for their API or go through, I think, Azure. Yeah, I think they have a Microsoft thing.
Aiden did quickly mention that if you're a small startup...
Aiden Gomez, the CEO of Cohere, and one of the co-authors of the original Transformers paper. And Niston's best buddy from Toronto.
But he did mention on Twitter that if you're a small startup and you want to use the model, just contact them directly. The main reason why they're holding back is that their main customer base is enterprise customers, and they can't just give out that profit stream away. But they don't mind so much if startups want to use it. So it seemed like they would allow startups to maybe just ask. Might just get a free license if you need it.
They definitely said that they're willing to work with the community. I will acknowledge as well, Yam just joined us. Yam Peleg, freaking co-host of the pod and our machine learning engineer in residence. What's up, Yam?
Hey, how are you doing?
Good.
Doing well?
Any comments on Cohere's breaking news?
I haven't, I didn't check all the benchmarks yet. From what I saw on the benchmarks that it was checked on, which for tool use and so on, it looks incredible, on par with the top models today. So it might be a really good model. It's a little large, which is interesting to see that we're starting to get more and more larger open source LLMs released.
It is interesting.
So it's really cool.
I agree with you, specifically because they did release a smaller model for us. And now this one is large. And with this size, it's like not super trivial for folks to run it on simple hardware. And Cohere, by the way, you can use this in our API. This is not only a model that we just released open source. We also have an API service that will be very happy for your money for us. And they actually announced like the pricing as well. And I think the pricing is competitive with something like a Sonnet from Claude, which is competitive on the specific RAG use cases. Very interesting from Cohere, folks, that they know that people use LLMs for RAG, at least in enterprise and company settings, right? And they know that GPT-4 is often used for something like RAG, and they're attacking the RAG angle, not the general, very smart general knowledge. They're attacking like, hey, we'll be able to have a model that's cheaper, that does the things that you want it to do. And one thing that they hid in the blog post release that I tweeted about is they said that new in Command R, something that Command R plus, something that didn't happen in Command R, is we now support multi-step tool use, which allows the model to combine multiple tools over multiple steps to accomplish difficult tasks. So if we just talked about SWE-Agent, for example, right? Something like this model could be utilized better for something like a SWE-Agent because multiple tool use across different steps is incredible. I haven't tested it, but because it came out like a day ago. LDJ, go ahead.
Yeah, it seems also in terms of general abilities, it has a lot of strengths in multilingual abilities, it seems, especially just a lot of people that speak non-English languages, they've had issues with sometimes even GPT-4. They complain that even that doesn't do too well in other languages. But yeah, it seems like this is probably the best model, and it's open source already, right? It's probably the best overall multilingual model, yeah, for at least open source. And it looks like it's even competing with GPT-4 in terms of non-English languages. But in terms of tool use, according to the benchmarks they used, at least Strategy QA, Hot QA I've heard of, and Bamboogle, they funny names, but it's beating Mistral Large significantly in multi-step tool use in these benchmarks, and also even Claude 3 Sonnet, and just like a little bit behind GPT-4 Turbo on average for the multi-step tool use.
Just to add really quickly to all of this, in the LMSys arena, the double blind test, which is more like the style of the model, which people prefer, the regular 34B Command R, that one actually still gets 10th place, like right behind Mistral Medium. So it is a nice model to talk to and have a conversation with. But just to keep in mind if you're actually using this to make consumer applications. The other thing to keep in mind is that you need at minimum a 24 gig GPU in order to even run it at 4-bit and have 6 gigs of space for context. But yeah, so I'm looking forward to what it shows up at in the LMSys arena, because the model 1/3 its size, it's already like in 10th place. So that will be interesting to see.
Yeah, and LMSys retweeted their release and said, hey, it's already in the arena accepting votes. So you can go and test it out in the LMSys arena, and then we'll see how better it performs. All right, folks, we're moving towards, I think, the last thing in open source that we want to cover. No, actually, Nistan, you had 2 stuff that we want to briefly cover. We did cover in the TLDR. We have 2 new updates from our friends, the fine-tuning community. Eric Hartford released a new Dolphin Mistral fine-tune. So if you guys remember, last week we covered that Mistral released their new base, like 0.2 base model, and they released it during a hackathon in Cerebral Valley, and the first Mistral hackathon. And there was some confusion about 0.2, but now the 0.2 model of Mistral 7B, the legendary, I think that Llama and then Mistral 7B are like the 2 legendary, definitely open source models, because still to this day, that's incredibly performant. And they released like a new base version of that, so not fine-tuned. And so Eric Hartford released Dolphin 2.8, Mistral 7B 0.2. It's a mouthful. Dolphin 2.8, Mistral 7B 0.2. Because naming is hard. But they trained it on Mistral's base model with 32K context. And what else can we say about this?
Yeah, I think it doesn't seem like a big deal, but this is one of those models that people, I feel like, will use the most, because up until now, you couldn't really do long context stuff or dump a whole bunch of code into a Mistral 7B. But this one is like the first really good fine-tune on a 32K 7B model, and all the Eric Hartford's data is really good. Yeah, this is one of the things I highly recommend people to run locally. I'm running it locally. It's really good. Does what you ask it to. Looking forward to do more long context stuff. Like, it's probably the best 16K context small model right now. in my
How is
opinion.
I think it's 32, right?
How is it compared to the other Mistral, to the base one?
To Sterling,
To the previous
it's not
one?
as good.
I'm saying like Dolphin on 0.1 and Dolphin on 0.2. What is the difference in benchmark scores?
I haven't looked at them. I was just using it. It doesn't feel as good as Sterling. I will say that. Sterling still feels much better, but again, it's hampered by the very short context length. So once that Sterling fine-tune on top of the 32K model comes out, that's what I'm going to be using. So if you need, so right now in 7B field, this is what I'm using. I'm using Sterling, and I'm using this one for summaries.
For folks who didn't listen to the previous ThursdAI, Sterling right now is the best kind of open source Apache 2 license model on LMC Serena. It's number 14th, and it comes very close to Mistral next, and it beats GPT 3.5. That Sterling is a fine-tune of a fine-tune, so it's a fine-tune of OpenChat. There is a fine-tune of Mistral, but the previous Mistral. And I think the context window, like Nistan, like you're saying, the context window there is not yet large. And so we're waiting for them to refine-tune this on top of Mistral 0.2 and then see how well Sterling performs. All right, moving on, like another announcement, a small one from our friend John Durbin, the Ouroboros and Bagel fame. He updated all of his Bagel DPOs. We've talked about with John Durbin previously on the pod. He updated all his models to the new 200K context window Yi34B, and for a while Yi34B from I forget who released Yi to us. Oh, just the company is also Yi, right? Oh, OneAI, right? Or
01 or
yeah, 01AI. It's really getting crowded in here, folks. It's really hard to remember all these companies. But yeah, definitely Yi34B is like a good base model, and John updated all his models into 200K context, supposedly giving us longer context. So as you see, Mistral released a newer, bigger model with longer context. Yi released a newer, bigger model with longer context. Cohere, Command R, released a new, bigger model with longer context. You guys see the trend? I definitely see the trend. All right. Moving on in the open source, I think we're pretty much done here. I just wanted to cover briefly and ask actually the ML folks here on stage, LDJ and Yam, have you guys seen Mixture of Depth from DeepMind? Is there anything worth like talking about this there?
I have not. I don't know if you guys have. Sorry, go on.
I've seen the paper. It looks really interesting, but I didn't have the time to go in depth into it. But it's an interesting concept, and I think it's one of the more interesting papers, you can say. But I didn't look into it too much.
Yeah, so we'll
very recent. Sorry, go on.
Oh, yeah, it's very recent. Like, it's almost breaking news. It looks like maybe Justin has seen some stuff. Justin is going to join us in a second. But
I'll quickly say that there were some criticism of it, and we're long overdue for a paper reading to go in depth.
Yes.
But yeah, some people were looking at it. It might be a lot less efficient by having like a router or something. So I'm not sure. Maybe Justin actually read it from all of us here.
Hey, Justin, do you have any comments on the Mixture of Depth paper?
Yeah, just read the paper, Mixture of Depth. It is interesting. It is something like with a token, you choose to pass the block or just use the residual, so you can reduce the computation in a 4 pass to something like that. This is actually a combination of a previous paper from Google called Expert Choice Routing, another routing mechanism for MOE stuff. But this time we have 2 experts. One expert is passing the block, one is residual, and then you can reduce the computation. So I think it is really interesting for people to build a model to reduce the computation. We'll see if there is anyone who is going to build a model with a mixture of that. It is very interesting. Yeah.
So one question that I had, and I didn't get this, I will pin a tweet from Hassan Hayat, also friend of the pod. He goes in depth into it, haha. But one thing that I didn't get, is this for training models or is this for inference time?
So both. So I'm reading it now, and it seems really interesting. So apparently you train with it, and it ends up getting like about equivalent benchmarks and stuff for the same amount of wall time to train it, and like same amount of flops in training. So it doesn't really make training worse or better, really. However, at inference time, apparently, it does significantly end up reducing the after training inference compute. Inference, for anybody unfamiliar, that's just the term for when you're actually running the AI model in production. Yeah, up to 50% faster, it says, per forward pass during post-training sampling, and it's able to dynamically allocate different amounts of compute apparently per token at inference time.
So I think, again, reading this together with you, I think the highlight there is that not all tokens are the same. There's transformer allocate compute uniformly across all tokens, but not all tokens are the same. And what they're trying to do is they're trying to optimize compute per token difficulty. They're saying like predicting the first token after a period is much harder computationally than within sequence tokens. So if you know the word cat, you know that A will come after the C with more certainty, and less compute is required for that than predicting kind of a start of the new word. And so what they're trying to do is predict this and allocate compute less uniformly and more specifically to reduce wasted compute.
Just really quickly, so it looks like, because when you run a mixture of experts model, you're only running 2 experts. And those 2 expert weights, they're the feed forwards or the MLPs, as they're called. They make up like 80% of the bulk that the chip is going through. So based on what Justin said, if one of them acts as a residual, then you're only computing one. So that way you are actually saving 40% of the compute there. And that also tracks with what LDJ is saying, with them saying up to 50%. So that's what it sounds like. It's instead of running the MOE and you're running 2 experts at the time, now you only need to run like 1 point something.
Yeah, and I think that the commentary that I saw was, how's this different from something like speculative decoding, which we've covered multiple times. I don't think we have time to go into this, but maybe during the reading of the paper. No, it's
not that at all.
It's not that at all, but speculative decoding uses another like draft model to try to predict the next token cheaply, and then have the larger model to then go down the path that you're knowing. DJ, you want to comment on this briefly, and then we'll move on?
Yeah, exactly. What you just said, I was actually going to bring up a similar thing of, this is not doing speculative decoding, but I think the fact that speculative decoding works and exists is evidence that for many or sometimes even most tokens, you can technically do it with much less parameters. This is technically something that's proven. And so theoretically, since we already know most tokens can be done with very little parameter count, then this is, I feel like, being implemented in a way where you're just teaching the model, hey, use less flops at inference time for really easy tokens, essentially, and then just spend more of the compute budget on those harder tokens.
So very exciting from DeepMind, and folks will definitely be following this. Mixture of Depth is an interesting name that we'll all remember, because we know that now we're in the age of MOEs. We have some MOE creators here on stage with us, and then we'll definitely see more. We'll probably see more MODs as well, in addition to MOEs. All right, folks, I think we're moving to the big companies updates. There's quite a few there, and I think that I will definitely start. And Nistan, I would love for you to join me as well with the Cloudflare AI updates. Cloudflare, again, I mentioned this briefly in the beginning, is a company that's known well for their DNS and DDoS protection and like all of these things. However, they have a big platform, which when I built Targum, the startup that I still run, I used fully on Cloudflare. They have a platform called Workers Platform, and they recently announced Workers AI. So they stepped into the AI. We've talked with the developer experience guy, Ricky Robinet, for an hour when they did this. And I was very excited about this because the ease of use of building with something like Cloudflare, plus their ability to scale up like worldwide is super dope. No, Cloudflare doesn't pay me. I was a Cloudflare shill even before, and I really love their products, and I think that people are not using them enough. So this week, Cloudflare has like their innovation week, whatever, and they announced a bunch of Cloudflare AI updates, and I want to highlight a few of them because they're now offering models from a bunch of friends of ours, friends of the pod. They're offering an open chat model from Alpay and Lyman Labs. They have Quen 1.5 from Justin and team here on stage. They offer this like super simply. You can run the Quen 1.5 7B. They have Llama 2. They have DeepSeek Coder. So they're like going really hard on like open source models there. They have Falcon, what interesting. Yeah, all these models you now can like very simply run. They don't tell you which GPUs they run, and they don't share speed or tokens per second, but you can like very simply build an app on top of this. And I think they have most of the tools that you would expect from a platform. So they have a vector data store called Vectorize, and you now are able to just like very quickly spin up something. The cool thing about this is the free tier is free. You can actually build demos and put them on production, and Cloudflare will pay for the first tokens. So that's like super cool. Pretty much no other platform allows you to simply do that. And you can run open source models, which is pretty cool. They've also announced now that they know that many people prefer Python. And so they announced that the Workers platform, which is traditionally JavaScript and TypeScript, because they run this in like a safe container in WebAssembly, and JavaScript, TypeScript is better for that, they now announced something incredible with Python. So you're going to be able to build all these like cool things with workers writing in Python. It's not full Python support, so you won't be able to import a bunch of important tools, but they have pre-built stuff like LangChain and Llama Index, and very interesting to see that they acknowledge that folks who build AI build with Python as well. And they have a Hugging Face integration, a one-click Hugging Face integration. So for the select models that we just talked about, like Qwen 1.5 and Zephyr and Falcon, like all these things, you'd be able to hit a drop-down in Hugging Face, and then ta-da, you'd be able to put this model in Cloudflare in production and get simple code. And one last thing is that they support fine-tune as well. So you can bring your own LoRa's, and we've talked about LoRa's. It stands for low-rec adaptation models. Basically, you fine-tune a model and have a little bit of a smaller file. So they now support this as well. You can like bring your own like fine-tune LoRa's and upload them to Cloudflare, and they will support it, which is pretty cool. Nistin, any comments on this? Because I know we've talked about Cloudflare before. You definitely also used it.
They're really being slept on right now. So this new release, they did add the Starling 7B, and they added News Hermes Pro, and they made it incredibly easy for you if you're a web dev to do or any other kind of app to do RAG on their side. I will actually finally try to use it because they solve a lot of the issues when it comes to infra. Now they seem to know what they're doing in terms of how to run them in 4-bit or 8-bit, and they've added and that LoRa integration now enables you to add your own stuff. But the one thing that again is being slept on is if you're running an application at scale in multiple countries, you can now comply with all the laws because they have GPUs, they say, in 150 countries. So you can actually keep that data there, and Cloudflare is really good with that if you're running an application en masse. And if you're doing like something multilingual, I would definitely use it. And I would use workers with Hermes 2 Pro for function calling, and for general safer talk back and forth, I would use Starling because the style is also a lot better, and these two models are already in Cloudflare workers. That's how I would build some kind of quick, cheap app to deploy with them. Yeah, I'd use Hermes 2 Pro function calling with RAG or whatever you have, because also the last thing to mention is that their documentation now is really good too.
Yep.
So they have very good guides. Yeah.
I
So
will
yeah,
also
if
say-
you're not into LLMs, if you're a web dev, app dev, mobile dev, just use it. Just give it a try.
Don't sleep on Cloudflare.
I'm not paid by them. If they have some credits, please send them. Yeah.
I'll connect you to the folks, and hopefully they'll send you some credits. But don't sleep on Cloudflare, definitely. One thing I will mention that's not super AI related, but definitely for folks who hear host files and everything, they have a S3 compatible storage system called R2, which doesn't have egress fees. So you don't actually pay for, if you guys remember lately, there's some stuff about Netlify, I think, that somebody got a bill with $150,000 because he left his website on production and suddenly got a DDoS attack. That doesn't happen if you use Cloudflare's R2 service. And now R2 has events as well. And so you can like host checkpoints, you can host like all these things on Cloudflare. You can like host results, you can host your models. It's pretty dope, and definitely give them a shout out. And congrats Cloudflare on the releases. Let's talk about Replit Coder. Did you guys see the code repair Replit? Replit had their dev day yesterday, and Replit has a very strong focus on AI. They have the AI like SDK now. If you do npm install AI, I think it's Replit's AI thing. And obviously they have millions of users fixing code and running code. And they used all those users fixing this code to train a new model based on DeepSeek Coder 7B, which we know the DeepSeek Coder is one of the top coding models. They have a process there, outline process, which looks like ridiculous to me. They have the data sources, obviously, in user events, in BigQuery, in Google, and then they use data processing from Databricks. They use a bunch of DSPs, pipelines, and LLM verifier. Like the length that they went to explain how they use the 7B model to train it and make it better than bigger models is quite impressive. They now have something called Replit Repair, on which they train these models, and they outperform Opus even with a 7B model on those specific code editing stuff. I really want to add we have this in on the top, Nistan, thank you for adding this. Anything else about code repair? I think it's incredible that Fine-Tune is giving a comeback, and a big company like Replit is showing that it's possible to achieve like incredible things with a 7B model on production for millions of users.
Yeah, just really quickly. First, to start off, DeepSeek 7B is an excellent model. It is the best 7B class coding model you can use right now. The reason I put so much more work on top of it is because Replit has, 10 million, 100 million users Replit has a lot of users. This is what they're planning to run at scale. This is like their one tool to go for every code editor, because their 3B was it was okay, and so they haven't put this one yet on Hugging Face. But yeah, the reason they put so much work is this is what they're going to run for all their users. And I actually started learning JavaScript on Replit myself way back in the day, and I taught others and taught kids using Replit. They have an insanely large use base, so it will be pretty interesting to actually see this in action on their app.
Yep. So I think we're moving forward because we're almost like an hour in when we have like maybe 15 minutes more for updates, and then we're going to have a conversation. Actually, let me reset the space right now. We've been like an hour in here, so let me just quickly do a reset, and then we'll get into a little bit more of big company LLMs, and then we'll talk about this week's buzz. So let's do a little reset. Alrighty, welcome everybody who just joined us to the second hour of ThursdAI, the weekly show that tells you everything that happened in the world of AI, open source, and LLMs, and big companies, and everything else. And we here week after week to talk about and keep up to date so you don't have to. And we're going to tell you all about this. And we just covered for the first hour, we've covered a bunch of open source stuff, and we've covered like big company stuff. In the next hour, we have a little bit more news, and then we have a conversation with the AI21 folks about Jamba. And I already see Maxime Lebon, who already fine-tuned the Jamba models. Also, we're going to talk about this as well. And you're here on ThursdAI. My name is Alex Volkov. I'm the host of the show. We have co-hosts here, LDJ and Nistin, and we have Justin from the Quen team as well. And we have Roy already from the AI21. And I will just say that if you're here for the first time, or if you're a frequent listener, the best way you can support us is by posting this on Twitter and signal boosting for us as well, and share it with your friends. And if you're listening to this on the podcast, thank you for subscribing. The newsletter will be sent with all the show notes and links. I will now move forward a little bit to talk about OpenAI. OpenAI has quite a few things, but very briefly, with no comments, just gonna run through them so you'll know. They announced an update that OpenAI ChatGPT 3.5 is now open to everybody who just goes to chat.openai.com with no login requirements, no phone requirements, which prevented many people from using it. Very interesting why they decided to do this, but you only get 3.5. If you switch to 4, it asks you to register and sign up, obviously. OpenAI also released an update to their fine-tuning examples. Many companies want to use the OpenAI stuff and then fine-tune on their own data. You've been able to do this for a while, but OpenAI today released something that improvements to their fine-tuning funnel, including examples of other companies like Harvey for Law that actually use their platform to fine-tune models. As far as I saw, you can only do 3.5, but if you're a bigger company, you can also probably fine-tune GPT-4. And they announced a few updates. One of the updates that I want to call out is there now is a weights and biases integration that's super simple. And we're the only kind of company that they support for your fine-tuning needs within OpenAI, which is super cool. And the last thing from OpenAI, we're going to cover in the voice and audio section. So I'm moving forward. Google has 2 updates this week. One is that, skipping from OpenAI, Logan Kilpatrick, the very, very prominent DevRel previously from OpenAI, the guy who you can trust that will answer your questions on X about OpenAI stuff, as long as he's able to, not AGI questions, just regular dev questions. Logan has left OpenAI recently, and now he announced this week that he's going to head the Google AI and AI Studio. If you haven't used Google AI Studio and you only know about the Google Cloud Platform stuff, AI Studio is like pretty neat. Like the prompting techniques and everything. I was very surprised. You can get a token. You can click a button and get an API key. You don't have to go to 17 like screens and billing addresses, whatever. So somebody in Google actually looked at the competitors' AI studios and playgrounds and workbenches and actually rebuilt it in Google. So AI Studio is pretty cool. So that's what Logan is going to go. And Gemini, Google's kind of leading model, has finally announced pricing. And you can use it free of charge, even via the API. You get 2 requests per minute, and you get 32,000 tokens per minute, which is not amazing. And you get 50 requests per day. And then you can pay as you go. And the pricing is $7 per million tokens. They call it preview pricing for the input. So $7, I think it's competing with like Sonnet or something. I think Opus is higher. And so it's fairly competitive with like GPT-4, I think, also. And also $21 per million tokens on the output, which is a lot. It's not super cheap. Remember that Gemini 1.5, I don't know if it's like I don't think Gemini 1.5 with the 1 million context window is included in this. That's only a preview. So this is for Gemini pricing. If you're a company that decides to use Gemini, you finally can start comparing not only on evaluations, but also on pricing. So this is some updates from Google. And I think that's it from Google. One last thing I wanted to say. Go ahead.
We have some quick breaking news. A team from Princeton. I don't know if you have the button.
Yes.
It's a new MOE, and I am looking at the config file, and it looks extremely interesting. It's an 8.5B MOE that the team at Princeton, in collaboration with Lepton, so his name is Chin, I posted it above, and it looks very interesting. It's a 25 layer, and I've made the expert smaller, but it's still an 8 expert MOE. So this is probably like the smallest, not really the smallest, but it looks to perform pretty well for how much they trained it. And I do think this deserves another deeper dive, because I suspect this would respond really well to fine-tuning, because it just hasn't been trained all that much. If it's performing this good at how much it has been trained, then it's likely to perform well to fine-tuning as well. So yeah, 8.5B MOE, it's called Jet MOE from Princeton University. They shrunk it down this architecture by what I'm seeing so far.
Awesome. Thanks, Nistan. And it's always fun to have breaking news. Hopefully, as I said, we're going to have breaking news of our own at the end of the show in an hour. All right, let's talk about one last thing here in the big companies. Grok with a Q, they added function calling. And so if you guys remember, we talked about Grok. Everybody talked about Grok. Grok has this LPU chip that they have competitor to the TPU and the GPUs, which they're able to run models significantly faster, like at least 5x faster on inference. The speeds are quite ridiculous, and everybody was like taken aback by some of the examples. And we've talked about Grok with the Grok folks here on stage. Now they added function calling, which is, or tool use, something that we all know, that stuff like OpenDevin and SWE-Agent, like all of these agents, they need function calling to better perform their tasks. So Grok now added function calling support as well, which is pretty cool. Also a way to get like structured output in JSON files. I think it's all in big companies and APIs. AI breaking news coming at you only on ThursdAI. So as I'm editing this podcast, Anthropic also announced function calling and tool use support, which now makes it available on pretty much every major AI platform. I just wanted to chime in here and say that we had breaking news, and even as I'm editing the podcast, it's very important for me to let you know that this is also now available. So not only Grok, Anthropic and the Claude models are now also supporting function calling. One shout out to Simon Willison, who said that GPT-4 with Vision API does not support function calling, and so now Anthropic with Vision supports function calling, and this is like the top AI with Vision that supports function calling and tool use, which is super cool. And as we're coming towards our interview with Roy and Maxime, I see Maxime in the audience. Maxime, feel free to come up as well. We'll put you up before our kind of chat. I want to talk about audio this week. Voice and audio. We have a category here which I particularly love, because you guys know I built something like stuff with Whisper. So this category I'm like very happy to announce updates in. So we'll start with a small one. Whisper, the ASR, automatic speech recognition from OpenAI, has been a long time winner in this category. And Whisper runs now on MLX. MLX is this inference platform from Apple to run on Apple devices. And it actually like beats Whisper.cpp from the same goat, Georgi Gerganov from Llama.cpp. He also built Whisper.cpp, which is for the longest time was also a super, super fast way to run Whisper. Whisper MLX, or Lightning Whisper MLX, I guess, is running on this like MLX platform from on the Mac, and runs 10 times faster than Whisper.cpp, which is quite astonishing. They were still squeezing that much performance out of this model that was released almost 2 years ago now, a year and a half. Transcribing 12.5 minutes in less than 10 seconds with Whisper base, which is super, super fast. I don't know if they do streaming. I really want them to do streaming so I'd be able to talk and actually get streamed results. But Lightning Whisper MLX, if you have a Mac and you want to try this out, definitely do. The other thing in the voice and audio category is this week we've gotten to finally understand how companies like HeyGen, for example, and other companies are doing audio. And they're doing this with unreleased OpenAI, something called Voice Engine. And so this week, OpenAI released a blog post where they basically said, hey, here's a preview of our tech for creating and fake and deep faking voices. Here's our tech. We call it Voice Engine. They actually registered the brand name as well. But they will not be releasing this to developers because of the concerns in the election year and different things. But some companies did get to use this, like HeyGen, for example, the company that gives you a deepfake persona. And they showed quite incredible amount of, how should I say, your voice being cloned with 15 seconds. We've been talking about this for a while on ThursdAI. Nistan, LDJ, if you guys remember, we've talked with the Koki guys that try to do this in open source, and we've been tracking this for a while. And I think we have the folks from Hugging Face who are following the voice industry. VB is joining us often to talk about the leaderboard in Hugging Face that also shows what open models in open source can do this. And no open source can come close to even 11 labs. I think what OpenAI showed is significantly better than 11 labs. And if you guys remember, also we talked about Hume. So this category is heating up, but also none of the big players seem to be able to want to release this first. And so it's going to be very interesting to see if any kind of big company releases this. Thoughts about OpenAI's voice engine, folks, before we move on? Nope. Okay, moving on. Voice engine will not be released. They're afraid to release this technology because it's potentially very, very significant. One thing that somebody from OpenAI said, Noam something, I don't remember the last name, and I recommend to all of you as well. If you haven't canceled voice authentication with your bank, I don't know if that thing still exists, cancel it. Don't have your bank do authentication with you via voice. And also, if you haven't had a conversation with your elders about the fact that somebody that sounds like you can call them and ask them for money, have that conversation now. It's time. We're in the post deepfake voice world. Your voice can be cloned even from a 15-second message on an answering machine to be convincing enough for elder people who have no idea that this tech exists. Talk to your elders, folks, and be aware that everything that you hear can be bullshit. It's a good time to start doing this conversation as well. Moving on to Stable Diffusion Audio V2. Stable Diffusion released audio V2 version, and you can actually go and check it out for free on stableaudio.com. StableAudio.com. And the cool thing about Stable Audio, there's a bunch of cool things there, but they've been working for it for a while. They didn't release, you guys remember when Stable Diffusion used to release stuff open source? It doesn't seem like that's no longer the case, unfortunately. But the cool thing about Stable Audio is that you can hum to it, you can upload strings and strums to it, you can sing to it, and then you can ask it hey, take this audio and turn this into beats, or turn this into an electric guitar. And that's super cool for just building your own kind of tunes. So definitely I heard folks who have guitar players, even folks on my team in Weights and Biases, who are getting really excited about Stable Audio, and hopefully they'll release this in open source so people can create music programmatically. One thing I will say, I always mention this probably since they released it, Suno is everywhere on my timeline right now. Everybody gets Suno songs to create for them. As I mentioned before in the beginning, for April 1st, I actually pretended to be a Suno DJ and just played AI generated music. And Suno is quite incredible. Everybody's getting excited. If you haven't tried Suno yet, and a birthday of a loved one is coming up, trust me that generating a song with Claude and then shoving it into Suno is going to be the best birthday kind of congratulation that you've ever did to your friends and loved ones. Until everybody does, this is going to make you very popular among your family. So try this out for a birthday or something, for a custom congratulations. Create a Suno song. It's super cool. I think that's all in the voice and audio category. And I think it's time to talk about this week's buzz. This week's buzz is the area in ThursdAI, where I talk about what I learned or some updates from Weights and Biases. So obviously I already gave you one update. Weights and Biases is the only platform that's supported from OpenAI's fine-tuning new capabilities starting today. That's super cool. But also we have some news of our own starting in 40 minutes. So I'm very excited, and hopefully you guys will stay with us for that announcement. But also, as I've mentioned before, our upcoming conference, our yearly conference in San Francisco, is called Fully Connected. It features speakers from the head of Llama. I don't know if he's going to talk about Llama 3. We'll see. I will definitely ask him. But also folks from NVIDIA and folks from Llama Index. There's a bunch of very awesome foundational model trainers in San Francisco that are joining this conference as well. And if you're looking for a chance to go to San Francisco or a reason to go, or you live there, please join us in our conference. It's at fullyconnected.com. I'll add the link below. And I got us a promo code. So if you add ThursdAI, you'll get a 15% off. And I'll actually know who the people who listen to ThursdAI, who of them came to San Francisco for this conference. I would love to see you there. And we're having a workshop about LLMs and evals a day before. So if you're looking for 2 days in San Francisco, please join our workshop as well. And all right, so this is the weights and biases stuff. And I think it's time for a deep dive. Folks, what do you think? I think it's time for a deep dive. Everything else we've covered. Oh, yeah, one last thing. DALL-E now has in-painting. I forgot this one. So if you're using OpenAI and you go to DALL-E and generate an image, you click on that image, you can then now paint over the stuff that you don't like and ask DALL-E to change only that stuff. So in-painting is pretty cool in DALL-E. You can like iterate on an image more and more. It's very decent, and they released it like harshly. So I want to highlight this. I think with this, we are right on time to chat with our friends from Jamba and the friends who are fine-tuning Jamba. So let me just like reset the space with some sound, and then we're going to get into this. All right, so now it's time for the second part of ThursdAI, where we have deeper conversations and interactions with folks that actually made the news this week or previous week. And so I want to introduce to the stage Roy Cohen for AI21. Hey, Roy, welcome. Nice to see you.
Hey, Alex. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Thanks for coming up. And I will definitely talk about how we got together and how you got invited to this. I also want to say hi to Maxime Lebon, friend of the pod, second or third time here on the pod. Welcome, Maxime.
Hello. Thank you. Thanks for the invite.
Maxime, you're joining from London. Is that correct?
Yeah, from London.
Awesome. So we're here to talk about Jamba. And Jamba is this thing that we've already covered on ThursdAI. But for folks who are listening only to this segment, Roy, do you mind giving us just an announcement, like what Jamba is, and start maybe from the fact that who you guys are in AI21 for folks who haven't heard about you before, and then let's talk about what you just released.
Yeah, sure. Happy to. AI21 was founded in 2017, so like around 6-7 years ago, by kind of luminaries in the AI field. One of the founders is Yoav Shah, which is a emeritus professor at Stanford, and Ori Goshen, who is a veteran entrepreneur, joined quickly by Amnon Shashua, who was the chairman, and he's the founder and CEO of Mobileye, a company which I worked for many years before that. And we first got scale with the application of WordTune. So we started on early as NLP, pure NLP play, AI for the 21st century, kind of writing on AI innovations. And WordTune, which is an application for reading and writing, is our biggest application on the consumer side. And on the platform side, we work on large language models. We had Jurassic and then Jurassic 2. And now we're continuing our innovation with Jamba.
That's incredible. And so you did definitely continue a bunch of innovations. So I do want to ask like a very brief Jamba description, and then we're going to go into details. And also we're going to talk about, obviously, the fact that you guys released this one in open source. So I don't think that you previously released the Jurassic stuff in open weights, did you?
We did not.
No. So this is like your guys' first foray into kind of giving the community some weights as well. So that's very incredible. So maybe let's talk about the announcement. Jamba was released by you guys. It's a hybrid architecture, very like novel. We haven't seen, or at least I haven't seen something at this scale of something like this before. So maybe for folks who have no idea what we just said, could you give us like a brief overview of Jamba and what's special about this release?
Yes, of course. Jamba is the first scale-up of the Mamba architecture, but it's interleaving of Mamba and Transformer. So it's an architecture that combines Mamba and Transformer, both benefits, and it uses both blocks of Mamba and Transformer, more Mamba than Transformer. And it offers us, it's also a mixture of experts model, and it offers us the ability to serve long context at really high quality at really efficient scale. So cost efficient, high quality, kind of benefits from all worlds of the RNN world of Mamba in a linear scaled way, in a very efficient way that can scale up to a large language model. And also with Transformer, which overcomes some of the drawbacks that we find when we research the pure Mamba models, and the interleaving of both types of model blocks gives us both the advantage of high performance and efficiency. So that's like the bottom line of Jamba. And it's a new architecture. This is the reason why we released it to the world. We know it's a new thing. We want people to play with it. We want to enrich the community and to get feedback and have many people play with it and like engage in the community and see how it goes.
First of all, I don't know if you had a chance to listen to the previous ThursdAI conversation when we actually heard about Jamba, and we've talked about this. We really appreciate open source here on ThursdAI. Like most of the folks here on stage either release open source or fine tune open source to an extent. So we're really like behind this, and so we appreciate that you guys released it. And definitely one of the benefits is giving the community the tools to play with this and then integrating those tools back. Are you guys already like serving Jamba through your APIs? What is the business use case for this as well? Is Jamba now available for your customers to use as well, or is this just a preview so that you build those tools going forward?
So to clarify, Jamba that was released open weights to Hugging Face and in general is a base model. It wasn't fine-tuned. It's not an aligned model. And we are aligning our model, we'll have a fine-tuned model served on our APIs very soon, in the week or 2 weeks very soon. And yeah, so this is how it will be in a commercial way. From our side, this is how we'll serve it to our customers. We also, of course, talking to a lot of hyperscalers to serve it there. But yeah.
Okay. I heard this. Okay, so let's talk about the highlights of the Jamba architecture. We've covered state space models quite a while ago and a few times as well. We talked about Mamba, LDJ, like you mentioned Mamba multiple times. We had RWKV creator, Pico creator, like the one of the maintainers of RWKV. We talked about Hyena as well from Together AI. So there's all these attempts at trying to beat transformers at the same like level of scale, but also allow for like more context and like cheaper hardware to run like more context as well, right? You guys have tried like the regular Mamba. It didn't scale as well. Can you tell us like how you got to the hybrid kind of decision and how you started? Because you probably spent quite a few dollars of compute on this, and this was like to some extent a bet. So who decided on that this bet will pay off, and like how did you arrive at this like hybrid architecture? And you said more Mamba than Transformer. So talk about the mixture as well, if you don't mind.
Sure. When the Mamba paper came out, we were really excited to try it out. We all the time trying new architectures and new experiments to improve the models and the model's architecture when we are preparing for a model training. So when Mamba came out, we tried it and we tried to scale it and we tried to see where it fails and where it shines. So if you remember in the Mamba paper, basically beats vanilla transformers on all benchmarks that were published in that paper. We obviously expanded that to more benchmarks, to more evaluation, to our internal evaluations. One of the first things we saw in terms of performance is that it's not as good in context learning, so in few shots. And with some reasoning benchmarks that we saw. So when we, then one of the ideas was, and I think there's others inspiring that experiment, to try to interleave transformers and Mamba. I think also it's mentioned in the paper that there are other models. For example, striped hyena is a combination of hyena and transformers. It was tried before, but nobody scaled that to that level. And when we tried to scale the model, we saw some issues with Mamba. There are several issues here. One is that pure Mamba had some performance flaws. And we saw that interleaving transformer there solve this, and we get a better model, better than pure transformer and better than pure Mamba, kind of the best of all worlds. And we know that it's better in efficiency than transformers. So that was a big opportunity that we saw there. And there are more architecture decisions that we can go on. Let me know if you want to stop here and continue. But there were some things we saw that we don't need positional encoding. We saw some issues with the loss stability that we had to fix with RMS norm. And there was a lot of experiments run with weights and biases. And yeah. And where you want to go with this?
Yeah, so I just want to highlight that you guys first released the models in open weights, and obviously the community start picking this up. So we'll soon, we have Maxime here. We'll soon talk about like the fine tuning aspect of this and how much, because you like you said, you released the base model and it's not instruction fine tuned, it's not chat fine tuned. But also I do want to highlight that this week you guys also released the paper, right? So like the model was released first, and then you followed up with the paper that has a lot of details about those, at least some of those decisions, and ablation at least of what you just said, that you've tried to scale Mamba architecture. So I just want to highlight for folks that the paper is up on archive. If there's anything specific from the paper that you want to highlight as well for us while we're on this decision-making tree topic, feel free. And if not, we can move forward in our conversation.
Yeah, so one small thing is that we also intend to release some of the smaller models ablations to the community to play with. That's another kind of contribution that we want to make to the community. I want to highlight the edge of the model. Why we think people should play with it and build with it is that it's kind of the best model for long context in its class size. So it has comparable or better benchmarks and internal evaluation that we did for this model size. And it should be very affordable and accessible to play with as it runs on a single GPU with a very long context. It's we also released how to fine-tune it. And we're really excited to see people fine-tune and play with it. So really excited to see what we talk about today.
So let's put some context. Sorry for the fun, folks. For folks in the audience who are listening to this, you have Jamba at 256,000 tokens in the max context size, which is 250,000 tokens. We've seen Gemini and stuff with 1 million tokens in the context size, but it's unclear how much compute Google actually spends for this. So we know it's at least technically possible. However, definitely not something that people can just run on their simple clusters. And you're saying that this is available. You can achieve up to 140,000 context tokens on one GPU, one very big GPU, but still on one single machine that you can rent, this is the benefit of the Mamba size, right? Because transformers, the more context you have, the quadratic scaling thing hurts you significantly. You have to pay more attention, basically. So I just want to highlight this, that you guys, this is the kind of the equilibrium you're trying to achieve with both hybrid. You're trying to get the highest quality output, which is transformers. You have this very nice and simple table that shows comparisons, but also the high throughput. Could you speak about the throughput specifically? What does that mean for folks who have no idea what this is, and how are you getting 3x over regular transformers or Mistral?
Yeah, first of all, I think just to explain the graph, we look at the size of the generation is 512 tokens, and the graph goes at the more the context is bigger, and then we see how long does it take to generate the completion the whole time, from encoding the input and outputting the output the whole time, and then we divide this by the number of tokens. So it's basically efficiency on a token basis. And the more you go into the longer context, and the quadratic attention of transformer, and bears a price of longer computation, less space on the GPU, and even might get you to out of a single GPU capacity. And this is where we shine in terms of throughput in general, and specifically also staying in less memory footprint. So it's both less compute and less memory. And another ablation that I want to highlight in terms of the paper is that we tried, once we saw that the combination of transformers and Mamba is beneficial, we wanted to see how much out of, let's say, 8 blocks of a model, how many of them will be Mamba, how many of them will be transformer, and how is that impact the performance. And we saw that between 1 out of 4 layers being a transformer, or 1 out of 8 layers being a transformer, the transformer to Mamba ratio, there was no significant difference. There was no significant difference in terms of performance, but in terms of efficiency, it's much better to have less transformers. So that way we reduce the ratio of transformers, and the ratio that you spend on the quadratic computation and memory on the KV cache for transformer is lower. So this is how we get to very high throughput. We just spend much less on memory and compute for the attention layer.
Awesome. Thanks for the clarification, because throughput is something that people maybe don't really natively understand that it's very important as well. Some people just get this as a given, but very important to improve this as well. And you're focusing on like 3x throughput. So you guys did this bet, like you trained a bunch. We're talking about a MOE, 52 billion total, but like a 7B MOEs, right? With 12 billion active parameters. You guys also went for all the trending keywords in this world. You gave us an MOE. One thing that you always mention, and this also mentioned in the press release, is best-in-class model. And this kind of class. Could you tell us like how you're thinking about this class of models in which you guys are in, and how you're like defining best-in-class?
So we think about class mainly in terms of the compute level and the amount of effort that you need to put computationally and memory-wise to complete the generation. So we think that Mixtral is like in the class size because it has more active parameters than us. It has 12.9. We have 12 billion. And so we see that kind of like the class size. That type of size is our model size. So I think that active parameters that are used in inference is the right measure for class size.
Yeah, and Mistral, I think you show benchmarks comparisons to Mixtral and Gemma 7B, and there's some benchmarks that even beat Mixtral, but on some MML you get fairly close, but with novel architecture, it's very commendable. And BBH I actually haven't heard of before, but yeah, Truthful QA, you guys doing competitive benchmarks to the same class, which is very interesting. I want to highlight then and move towards the kind of the conversation where when you release the model to the open source community, then you get to hop on stage here with fine-tuners. And so I want to introduce Maxim. Maxim, do you mind briefly giving an intro to who you are and what you do? And then we'll talk about Jamba specifically, and we'll have a chance to maybe ask Roy some questions and talk about your fine-tunes.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. I am a machine learning scientist, and I sometimes release models. So what I do most of the time is more like merges, but I'm also very interested in SSMs, which is why I was super interested in Mamba when it was released. Nice. So when you saw Mamba, what's your first take, and what piqued your interest specifically? When you saw Jamba. It's confusing. Yeah, Jamba. I tried to. We saw different Mamba models that were fine-tuned and like a bit bigger, about 3 billion parameters. And to be honest, they were not particularly good. So it was quite exciting to see like an upscaled version of it. I've also used that there are some issues with the current Mamba architecture related to the ability to copy the context and all like a recall task. So hybrid architectures merging Mamba layers and transformer layers are probably a way of mitigating these issues. So that's what I wanted to see with Jamba. And my first tests were really positive. It looked really strong models. So the next question was, can we supervise fine-tune it the way we do it with the transformer models? Is it going to be good as a chat model, or maybe it won't follow instructions instead? Awesome. And you already released something, but you also, I think you tried twice, right? Could you talk us about your tries? Because I think you said the first one didn't really work for you. I had a lot of different tries over the weekends and afterwards. But I had a successful one in the end. It's not necessarily related to the architecture. It's also related to like the tooling in general. But I released Jamba Tipus, which is like a very modest and very humble fine-tune of Jamba because it uses the Open Platypus dataset. So it's about 20K samples, one epoch. So it's very small. But with this small dataset, you can see that Jamba is able to really follow instructions and answer questions. The throughput is also pretty good. So that was a very exciting result. Awesome. I just want to highlight that Platypus Authors is here in the audience with us. Ariel, shout out to Ariel. We had the chat with the Platypus team back when they released Platypus, and it's really like a great data set to quickly try things on top of. Roy, so let's maybe switch to you and kind of releasing the model. We briefly touched on this, but I want to hear like how, from a company perspective, how you guys decide to open source or not to open source. So what's the benefit that you get from somebody like Maxim, like trying your models and actually giving you feedback? I did see that one of your folks very late at night, at the same day that you released this, already worked with Wing Lian on Axolotl, the fine-tuning tooling that folks use, and already fixed the bug for Axolotl to be able to allow for fine-tuning. How's this like process happening within the company? How do you decide on sending out open weights?
Yeah, when we started working on this model, we knew that this is very new. This architecture is very new. And we wanted to engage with the open source community in large language models. We think it's amazing. We've been following it for the last years or more. And we thought that the community can benefit and we can benefit from it back. So we are releasing a base model. We're also working and we see very exciting results that we will publish soon on the aligned model. But it's very exciting to see models. I think to see people play and fine tune the model because we learn from it as well. And I think this is a very new architecture that we believe in and we promote it. And I think that engaging with the open source community is the best way to do so.
Absolutely. That's great. And definitely we've seen like companies take more of a open weights route and the community definitely flourished, especially like focusing on meta stuff and Mistral. Maxime, back to merging, like the stuff that you're known for, at least the stuff that we've talked about before, is all about merging. And we've seen the resurface of the merging craze recently with Sakana AI releasing their like environmental evolutionary algorithms for merging as well. They even tagged you in the release, which I thought was super cool. And back when we talked, you were the author of Lazy Merge Kit and a bunch of stuff. Actually, Maxime, I don't know if you know this. I actually got to meet Charles at one of the events. It was super cool dude, the guy, the creator of Merge Kit itself. Have you tried merging this? What is the... So I understand how merging works in transformers. Let's talk about merging in the hybrid architecture.
Yeah, I think you would need to modify merge kit to be able to merge the member layers. So it wouldn't be like super straightforward right now. But maybe Charles is working on it. Who knows really? He's very fast. So no, that would be great. But I think that when you want to do merging, you need like a rich ecosystem of high quality fine-tuned models. So I think that's what we are lacking at the moment. But it can be really nice maybe in a month when we have different version of these models to merge them and see what we get.
I will say for folks who are listening to this and have no idea what merging is, Maxime and us, we had a deep conversation about merging. Maxime, you have a bunch of content as well that folks are more than welcome to follow you and find this content, and also our conversation on ThursdAI about merging, because the top models right now on Hugging Face are a bunch of merges of other fine-tunes, and people are trying different alignment techniques and fine-tuning techniques in different models, and then it doesn't require a lot of GPUs to just try and merge them as well. But you're saying... I think it's a good call out. Like, we need a lot of fine tunes for Jamba to start merging them and see the benefits, right? This is basically where it ends. Roy, maybe from your perspective, you said in the beginning that kind of the way you got to a hybrid architecture is like you're keeping your ears to the ground in different like novel ways, etc. Have you guys seen any of the merging kind of community stuff? And what's basically your take on your, like, if you tried any of these techniques at all?
I am not aware of that. Again, just to highlight, I'm on the product side. I'm not an engineer or the leader of this. So there might be experiments that I'm not aware of, things that are really new, but I'm not sure what you're meaning by merging. I'm not familiar with that terms.
Oh, in that case, I have a chat with Maxime that you may want to listen to. But yeah, for a product manager or a PM on this, you sound very technical, which I appreciate. Let's talk about kind of future plans for Jamba and kind of other things. So we just saw today Cohere released the CMD R like a week ago. Now there is like a bigger model. Do you guys, so you already mentioned briefly plans of yours to fine tune for instruction and release this on your platform. And I know that like often future plans is like a problematic area to get into, but from the perspective of keeping people excited towards AI21, what are some of the things we are able to look forward to now that you've proven that this hybrid architecture actually can scale and actually can perform best in class? What are some of the things we should look forward to, in addition to the stuff that Maxime does in fine-tuning?
So one of the things that I haven't mentioned yet regarding AI21's kind of positioning and strategy in the market is that we are, in addition to serving large language model as a general models, we also have a big branch of models called task-specific models. So we have models that are fine-tuned specifically for summarization, for contextual answering, which are not only models, they are also systems with validations and connection to other layers that help it to be like kind of like a complete system of task-specific systems in a way. So Jamba will power also our next generation of that model. So the summarization, the contextual answering, and more task-specific models that we plan to do. In terms of like bigger, more advanced models, we are trying and experimenting with many ways. We don't publish yet our specific goals or specific announcement that will follow from that ground. But we should expect exciting news from us in the future, in the near future.
Awesome. And falling back on Maxime here, because at least to me, once you release something open source, obviously the excitement about Mistral keeps happening because people fine tune this, and then it beats different like evals, and like we get better models. Like for example, we previously talked about the best Apache 2 licensed open source model right now on the leaderboard for LMSys is Starling 7B, which is like a very small model from Mistral, and Mistral was released, I think, in September. It's like a fine-tune, and it's basically a gift that keeps on giving, keeps with excitement. And here step in folks like Nistan, LDJ, like Maxime, with better data sets for improving instruction as well. Excitement will keep happening just because you guys raised this model in the open source. Maxime, I wanted to maybe turn to you and ask, do you have any future plans with Jamba as well? Are you training like bigger ones? And if you have any questions for Roy, I think, or suggestions, because you try to fine tune this, and this is the space where like the community meets and talks about these things, which is a big part of why even to release this model. So feel free to chime in here.
I would love to do bigger fine tunes, but it's pretty big model, so I don't really have the budget right now. If a sponsor wants to help me fine tuning on Slim Orca or something like that, happy to connect. But other than that, no, thank you for releasing the model. It's really good. It really proves that it's a working architecture. The paper is also really nice with a lot of insights, so I would recommend everyone to read it. And I think that we're going to have a lot more Mamba layers in our transformer architecture in the future.
Awesome. So
thank you very much. Thank you.
Yeah. So Roy, definitely the community appreciates. I just do want to highlight that for folks who are listening to this, if you have compute to give, Maxime, I get impromptu DMs all the time for folks. Hey, you're looking for GPUs? I'll definitely pass forward. If you, the listener, are listening to this and you're listening to Maxime, there's not a lot of more people than the folks like Maxime, like John Durbin, like Eric Hartford, like LDJ and Nissan, like all these folks who will take some compute that you will donate and do some cool stuff with it. So if you have GPUs to contribute, definitely this is a worthy cause to like expand what's possible with these open source as well. I think that's pretty much on my side. Roy, I want to leave you some time to talk about how the community can follow up and what they can help with as well. What are you looking for from the community? The stage is yours to highlight the members of the team that worked on this that maybe you want to shout out specifically. Definitely go for it. This is your time.
Wow, the list to shout outs for the people who worked on it is very long, but I would just highlight the two main contributors to the paper that are really like the masterminds of the model, which are Ofer Lieber and Barak Lenz, our CTO, and Ofer is an engineer. And there's a lot more people that I would, if I mention more, I would miss much more. They will be angry at me. But we would like the community to engage with us, to fine tune. We are looking forward to see where this model shines. And we release the base model. We will release a fine-tuned model, the general purpose general model, instruct model. We also will fine-tune it to task-specific models, and we will serve it. But I'm looking forward to the creativity of the community and to hear from them. And please do reach out to us, to me, to whoever's on the team that you feel comfortable reaching out to. We will reply. We will also try to be engaged in kind of our Discord channel and on Hugging Face. And yeah, we're happy to become a prominent member of the open source community for large language models now.
We love that, absolutely. And Roy, as you now have been for more than 20 minutes on stage on ThursdAI, you're now converted to friend of the pod as well. More than welcome to hop in and do announcements as well. And I think one of the best things that I saw from ThursdAI community is that I've got to learn so much from folks who come up here and explain to us the stuff that they released, but also other folks connecting with other folks. We've seen this throughout, and I definitely welcome you guys also to this as well. One maybe last thing, LDJ, do you have any follow-up questions that you maybe want to ask with your more expertise than me? We still have Roy, and we have an announcement from Ars in 5 more minutes. But before that, LDJ, if you have any final questions you want to finish on, and then we'll just move forward.
Yeah, I was just going to say if there's any inspiration taken from Striped Hyena or what you think of that work, because they use Hyena instead of Mamba, and I think it was actually done a little bit before Mamba maybe. But yeah, they found I don't think they published a paper on it, but they found in together a blog post. They talked about how they found something similar where with just even just a small part of it being transformer based, it ends up getting a lot of those benefits of transformer, and it ends up better as transformer alone or SSM based alone. And so it seems like you guys found a similar thing, right?
Yeah, we also mention it in the paper. I Ofer and Barak, which are the leaders of this, they have the memory of what inspired them and when inspired them. But I assume that they were aware of it. Our team is pretty aware of all the innovations in the field. We're keeping a close eye on it.
Sounds good. Yeah, I don't have any other
Awesome.
questions or.
With that, I think this concludes the interview. Roy, thank you so much for joining, and a shout out to the folks on your team who made it happen. I'm very happy. I will say that I don't usually plan as much, but we had a chat with Roy yesterday to talk about what we're going to talk about. I'm very happy that we were able to highlight you guys, and thank you for featuring weights and biases as much in the paper. It's really awesome to see how much you guys used it, and looking forward for more collaboration in the future. With that, thank you, Roy, and thank you, Maxim. I want to thank everybody who joined from week to week. It's incredible. Even though Twitter rugged us a little bit in the beginning, I'm very happy to bring you the show this Thursday, especially because we have breaking news of our own. And as you guys know, I love hitting this breaking news button. So with that, thank you everybody who joined on stage. Thank you, LDJ and Jun Yang as always. Jan was here before, Nistan, Maxim and Roy for joining. And then my teammates, Tim and Scott, who joined us as well. I see Morgan in the crowd and the rest of the Weights and Biases team who joined us as well. With that, I'll let you be, and happy Thursday, everyone. And we'll see what else next week will bring. Cheers, everyone.
Woohoo!
Woo!